Hey guys, Darren Asbury here with Revital Outdoors, bringing you another exciting podcast. Tonight, we're going to go to the BFL Choo Choo division. We're going to interview Mr. Jason Whitehead. Jason got a top 5 finish last year at the BFL Choo Choo division on Wheeler Lake. So we're very excited to talk to another top 5 angler. He's going to give us a rundown about his tournament last year, a few tips and tricks on how he did his tournament, and then what he predicts for this year. That tournament is coming up in the Choo Choo division in the next couple of weeks. Before we get started, as always, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you get notified when all of our content is dropping. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. That's Revital Outdoors. Also, if you've never heard of Revital Outdoors, we're a premium CBD company. We make premium CBD products for all the outdoor enthusiasts. All of our products are THC-free, made right here in America. So check out our website, www.revitaloutdoors.com. You can purchase all of our products directly off our website. Also, we got great news coming in the near future, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel and then check us out on Facebook and Instagram, as I just mentioned, because we have a really, really cool opportunity coming in the near future for all of our fans, followers, and people that believe in Revital Outdoors. So that being said, the housekeeping stuff is done. Let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Jason Whitehead. How you doing this evening, bud?
Good, buddy. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm absolutely honored to have you on the podcast. Thank you for agreeing to be on with us. So, man, let's just get right into it. Wheeler Lake. You know, Wheeler, it's got a lot of history in tournaments. You don't really hear a whole lot about it, but it really stands really true for itself for the fishing that it has done, the tournaments it has in the past. It seems like that's a lake that has a lot of championship tournaments on, regionals, Costa Series and Toyota Series championships, BFL regionals as well. So tell us a little bit more about Wheeler and what do you like about it?
Wheeler's very diverse. It's a long lake. I live just up Georgia Mountain, all the locals, but right up from Ditto Landing, actually between Ditto, and I'm about 10 minutes from the Guntersville Dam. So I do a lot of river fishing mostly. But anywhere from there all the way down, like it's very diverse. There's grass, there's of course the Decatur Flats, which you hear about very often. And then even by the dam, and last year I know a lot of guys that actually locked through with the current and stuff that's down there. So it's a great fishery, and it's definitely pumping out some bags this year for sure.
Cool, man. Cool. So, well, I've heard a lot more about Wheeler Lake in the fall time, but looking at your history from Wheeler, seems like you do really, really well in the springtime. So tell us what the magic is on Wheeler in the springtime. And, I mean, is it like every other lake, fish are moving up, pre-spawn, spawning, when they have tournaments there, specifically the BFL? Or, what kind of the in and outs that anglers need to look for when they're on Wheeler in the springtime?
This year, I think it's going to be a little bit different than last year. When I finished top 5, I finished 4th last year in the BFL there. And with the rain and high water and flooded and cold fronts and stuff, it really backed those fish up. So even I think it was the end of April, 21st, 22nd, somewhere in there last year. So the tournament's going to come up at the beginning of April. And I think the setup and conditions is probably going to be about the same, because the fish seem to be this year about a month ahead of where they were last year. I was actually out on Guntersville this Monday, and I actually went up shallow, found some clear water, and actually saw a couple fish on bed already on Guntersville. So that's going to throw a curveball into it. It's going to fish a lot different this year than it did last year. My key last year was, like I said, I live not far from the river, so I would put in at Ditto Landing all the time if I'm not putting in right here at the Guntersville Dam. So the tournament last year leading up to it, I got on a pre-spawn bite where those fish are moving back into the pockets, the creeks and stuff at the mouths of the creeks, man. I mean, loaded up. Every mouth pocket that you went into, just pre-spawners sitting there, and they were big. So leading up to the tournament weekend before, I'm like, man, I'm going to hammer them. Well, then the rain hits. 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts, rain, water comes up. It's nasty. I'm like, all right, this ain't going to work. I'm scared to run up there. Like, I know I can go up there and catch them, but whether I can get up there and back. And so I went. It was Wednesday afternoon, I rode over to keep having to drive so far. I fished Thursday morning right around the power lines, just past we put in at Joe Wheeler State Park. So I ran up, and I was catching them on grass, which a lot of people said, I mean, the grass is coming back. It went away for a little while, and it's coming back now. But I was mainly focusing on hydrilla in about 6 to 7 feet of water. Same type situation down the lake. They were moving in, pre-spawners just kind of moving up, chilling out on that hydrilla to go back in those flats. I really kind of shy away from the Decatur Flats just because I know how much pressure it really gets. Like, I mean, yes, you can get right with a quickness, but if you don't know where those subtleties are or those little depressions that are out there in the flats, man, you could spend all day out there just whaling. You come across 5 of them. I mean, you could get right in 5 casts, but last year also, and for all the other BFL guys that watch this, they'll know it was the roughest water I have. The winds were terrible. I mean, straight out of the north, blowing straight down the lake. The roughest, hands down, the roughest water I've ever been in my life. And I
they let you all go?
It was terrible. We blasted off from the Joe at the state park, Joe Wheeler State Park, and we were running up. Everything was fine until we made that left turn right before you get to the Elk River, and everybody put on the brakes. It was terrible. I mean, water coming over the front of the boat. It was awful.
So the wind was coming out of the north.
It was bad, blowing.
So you had 5-6 footers you were dealing with.
Terrible, probably worse than that. My co-angler, he actually lives there on Wheeler. He said, Jason, I grew up here, and this is the worst I've ever seen it. So got to back up a little bit. We when I caught him in practice, all right, I went down, I found some grass, I caught him in practice, and the wind was opposite direction, and we couldn't get to him. And I kept telling the co-angler, I'm like, man, bear with me. The wind's supposed to change directions at lunchtime. Bear with me, bear with me. Well, for that tournament, I was an early boat. I had boat number 22, so I had a really good draw, expecting, hey, I'm going to get up here, bust them early. It didn't work. So I kept telling the co-angler, said, look, man, just bear with me. Bear with me. The wind's going to swap direction. When it does, this lake's going to lay flat, and we're going to have a little while to be able to catch them. So we pulled up 2 spots. It was kind of a gravel bar that came out, and it had a hydrilla off the side of it. And in practice, I caught them on a big Swimbait. Well, with the rise in water got dirty. So I swapped over, couldn't get bit on the Swimbait. We had about 30 minutes before weigh-in, and that's when I caught my 3 biggest fish. I tied on it. I call it a ledge buster. I'm just old school ledge buster, but I think it was a Picasso, that Aaron Martin's Picasso spinnerbait, the big willow leaves. Threw it up there, let it hit the gravel bar, get it back, and you could feel the line almost get to the grass. Man, they'd hammer it. He caught a 3 and a 4. I caught that 5 and 6 pounder, which is how I bumped up the leaderboard. Because before then, I mean, I had a small limit, so I ended up culling 3 times in a short period. So it worked out. This year, man, they may already be up by the time April comes around, and there'll be some sight fishing. A lot of staging areas too. So I haven't seen the water level. I've been spending a lot of time here on Gunnersville, and I'm going to miss the tournament this year. I'm going to be down on Eufaula. I wish I was out there though, man. It's getting right. It's getting right.
Right. I was actually talking to a buddy of mine named Anthony Goggins, and he was telling me about Wheeler right now. He said, dude, this could be probably the heaviest weight tournament in a BFL Choo Choo division event in the history. So he even predicted, and this is crazy to sound like, but he even predicted close to that dirty 30. He said, if someone comes in with 26, 27 pounds, it would not surprise me because they can go catch a really, quality couple of fish off of a bed, meaning you can catch like a 4 and a 6 right off the get-go off a bed, a male and a female. And then he said, someone that can put that blade or that flipping stick in their hand, they can go to town and maybe get that little bit of dirtier water down south of the lake. And it can get pretty nasty.
If the weather stays all right and it doesn't flood, the water stays normal, because right now they're pumping some water through it with all the rain that we've been having here. Gunnersville's been fluctuating between a foot to 2 feet, and I've seen it as low as 3 feet down, which is the lowest I've ever seen it. The water fluctuating just got the fish kind of just waiting, so to say. But if it stables out and the weather gets right, it's going to be right. I don't know if you follow Randy Howell, but he took his wife out this week down there and mashed the smallmouth.
Oh yeah, I got to pull that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Randy and his wife for a little bit. I'm pretty sure Robin is a better angler than Randy, because it seems like every time they go out with one another, she's always catching bigger fish than he is. You're talking about a guy that caught a 12 and a 13 this year in the Bass Pro Tour. So, they were actually catching smallmouth. So you can kind of see there what happened. Unbelievable. So, that being said, I do want to bring up, I know Wheeler has a different population of fishing between the largemouth, the smallmouth, and I've even heard of spots being in there. Is it you target one species, or can you just fish and you're going to probably have a mixed bag?
You can kind of decide what you want to do. You know, if you
Okay.
want to get and you get on those gravel bars, kind of like I did. I mean, I was fishing at the end of the bar was 10 to 12 foot. Now I was fishing where the grass was, which was between 5 and 6. So I was catching largemouth. My co-angler weighed in a 4-pound smallmouth. So he was throwing this way, I was throwing that way. But there's no telling. I mean, like that. I mean, you could catch a big largemouth and turn around and catch a smallmouth right behind it. It's just one of those areas that I was targeting then. I mean, if I went back, that's probably the first areas that I would check again, because there's not a whole lot of places like that out there.
Now, as far as what anglers need to be looking for on Wheeler Lake this time of year in the springtime, are they looking for what you talked about? Those shallow water flats coming
Mhm.
off main lake secondary points that kind of maybe have some structure to them, or is that what they're relating to? Is bigger creek arms that lead into spawning flats or shallower areas?
Right. Yeah. If the weather stays nice, I think you can get back on those flats, those 3, 4, 5 foot, and just
Mm-hmm.
throw surf baits till you come across some. If the water's clear, then you could probably see some that are up there cruising. But just the area, I think, to catch a lot of fish, or to at least have an opportunity of catching multiple species, or at least locating them starting out. That's one thing with the BFL to back you up on that, man. These guys they're no joke. I mean, Jordan Lee showed up. A couple other heavy hitters were there for this particular tournament that I placed, and there's going to be some heavies that are there, so it's going to take some weight. But yeah, man, it just all depends on the weather. If the weather stays,
Right.
that's where they're going.
Okay. So last couple questions before we let you go. Really great information, Jason. Really appreciate it. What about as a co-angler? I know you said you had a co-angler last year, did really, really well. You were throwing swim baits and spinner baits. What do you think as a co-angler this year to be successful? What does he need to be thinking about as far as bringing tackle wise?
Just cover water. I mean, there's no telling what you're going to be boat draw. I mean, you could get somebody that if they allow the lock in this year, you may lock through and you may be behind the dam. Another guy may make the run like I wanted to make and go all the way up, and you're fishing current on the river. So, I mean, everything from a mixed variety of anything from 2 to 3 foot, chatterbait, spinnerbait, swim bait, stuff like that, all the way to plan on fishing 12 or 13 foot. But I would definitely throw moving baits if I were a co-angler. I'm a pretty fast-paced fisherman myself. Some guys really like to slow down and stuff. So, I mean, if I was a co-angler, I'd definitely bring some moving baits for sure.
That's kind of against the grain for most co-anglers, and I'm a co-angler myself. I tell people you need to slow down, you need to, do something different and all that. But for the amount of current that flows through Wheeler, especially in a rainy season, without the rain, it's still flowing a
Yeah.
lot of water. They're still pulling a lot of water. I would go ahead and suggest to those co-anglers, bring something moving bait wise, and that you cover water with. But it's a little bit different. So if your boater's throwing a spinnerbait, throw a swim jig. If your boater's throwing a crankbait, he's throwing crankbait, maybe take some silent crankbaits with you. Before I give away too much, it's just an idea what you probably need to think about.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
something along those lines. Yeah. I mean,
and it could be as stupid as much as just like a color change. If your boater's throwing, something that's bright white shad pattern, maybe you throw something chartreuse black back or something like that. It's crazy the little subtle details that you can do differently as a co-angler. That's you're going to catch them. So, but never try to replicate exactly what that boater's doing unless he's just smashing them every cast. Try to change it up some way, even if it's down to spinnerbait and you're throwing a single Colorado blade spinnerbait as a co-angler and he's throwing Willie's blades. I mean, that little subtle detail, you never know what can happen with that.
yeah,
So,
it'd be fun too. I mean, you get back there on those flats, any cast, like any direction at any cast. There's not a wrong. So, I mean, if you get back there on those flats in 4 or 5 foot, you can throw in any direction and catch a fish. So that's what I was saying. Something moving, you'll be fine.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, really appreciate you coming on to our podcast this evening. Before we let you go, I looked at your Facebook. You got a really great history as a tournament angler, but I know you got a lot of support from your family, your friends. I know you got a few people that will help you around the area that you live. So anybody you want to give a shout out or thank you to, we just want to give you that opportunity, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. All my friends and family. I mean, I do have a pretty good following, and last year I fished a lot of tournaments and stuff leading up to it. Last year was the first year that I was able to fish on Saturdays. So a lot of the opens, the BFLs, planning on the Toyota series coming up, and I want to thank all my friends and family for all the support and they always got my back, pushing me to do better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, well, Jason, thank you again for coming on our podcast. For all the listeners out there, we've been talking to Mr. Jason Whitehead, a top 5 angler from last year at the Choo Choo Division BFL tournament with Major League Fishing on Wheeler Lake. So, Jason, thank you for your time and giving us a little insight to Lake Wheeler. Before we let everybody go, just want to remind you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Check out Jason on Facebook and Instagram. All of the anglers that we've been interviewing with our podcast, they depend on that. They love the sport. So, they're great anglers. Please give them a follow. Shoot them a message if you want to. They're always willing to talk fishing. So, from all of us at Revital Outdoors, I'm Theron Asbury. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. We will see everyone on the next one.